Okay, thanks, and welcome back, folks. I call the meeting back to order of the Standing Committee on Government Operations. Our next briefing is from Terri Harper, Chief Financial Officer of the Electric Cooperative Incorporated, who joins us remotely from Alaska. Thank you for joining us, and I understand you have an opening statement before we begin the conversation. Please go ahead. The floor is yours. And we'll, just so you know, we'll wait for the end of your presentation, and then we'll go into questions from committee members.
Thank you. Good morning. As he introduced me, Terri Harper with INN Electric. We have three small communities in Southwest Alaska: Iliamna, New Halen, and Non-Dalton. That is what the INN stands for. And I'm currently their Chief Financial Officer. Prior to coming to INN, I was the PCE Program Manager, which you heard probably on Friday from Curtis Thayer, some background on that program and how it operates here in Alaska. During my time at AEA, I worked on upgrades that were funded by the Denali Commission to rebuild power plants, bulk fuel tank farms, and do some alternative energy projects. I've sat on several statewide and federal subcommittees on different energy issues around the state, serve as a legislative subject matter expert on the Power Cost Equalization Program, co-chair the APA Audit and Finance Committee workshop, and also am the chair for the APA Budget and Audit Committee. So in my time working in rural Alaska, I just have a wide variety of experiences in how things have worked, how they've not worked. I really want to save my time for questions from you guys and how I can contribute something meaningful to what you guys are trying to accomplish there. So I will keep my remarks brief and turn it back over to the chair. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation.
Wow, those really were brief remarks. Okay. Maybe what I might ask, Terri, is do you want to just give us kind of a bit of an overview of what it is your organization does, and kind of how you conduct your role? It might help committee members with direction for questions, because I'm coming in here completely blind. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe also, if this can help the presenter to focus on some hallmark successes and maybe some hallmark challenges your organization has faced, because it's always good to hear, people always think they're unique. So, but sometimes when we find it may not be a complete mirror image of experiences, but we find some important elements and lessons in every narrative or story that folks have. So you would have, given the fact that you represent a very small sort of conglomerate of, I think you said 3 areas, that would be very helpful for us. So maybe some hallmark successes and how you broke through, and maybe some hallmark challenges you're still trying to figure out. Thank you. And that doesn't mean bad when I say challenges.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Does that help, Terri?
Yes, that does help clarify what I can share with the committee. So I am the CFO for a very small electric utility in rural Alaska, and we have about 300 meters spread over 3 villages. We're remote. We can only get things there by barge or by plane. You cannot drive or get there any other way. So we're met with those challenges as far as logistics, response time. If we have an outage, we have to deal with bringing in folks from outside of our communities, which can be very expensive and very challenging. We do not have a lineman on staff because we simply cannot afford one. So we are required to work together with other companies, other electric utilities, to deal with whatever kind of crises we may be having. As far as the financial challenges, we operate from a very small base of customers. So any any expense that we have is spread over 300 meters, and it can get really out of hand quickly. My apologies. I work from home, and my dog is going to start barking if I don't let her out. I'm so sorry. One moment. I tried to take care of that before the meeting. So our challenges have been staffing. In the remote communities, you have a very small pool of folks to choose from. It's a very sediment kind of lifestyle in a lot of ways. So we have a hard time getting folks excited about coming to work. So that's probably some of our biggest challenges that we have. And we operate with a very small staff. Some days it's 2.5 of us running the entire utility from top to bottom. So that's, what's going to happen when I leave. I don't know, because of the amount of work that I do for that one small community or utility. I'm just not sure how they're going to deal with that. And I know that we're very fortunate to have the staff that we do have, because many of the other small remote utilities simply don't even have the level of staff that we have. So I think as far as those are our biggest challenges, our remoteness, our cost, and our staffing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it sounds like your jurisdiction has some very similar challenges to our own. So I'm going to turn it over to committee members and see if we can tease out some questions. Does anyone have kind of some specifics that they wanted to put to Terri to ask about? Mr. Hawkins, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Couple areas. First of all, what do you do about integration? Because if you're standalone, do you hook up through some type of network at all? And second of all is, what do you do in crisis? Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead,
So
Terri.
we are we are a standalone micro utility. We have 3 diesel generators and 2 hydro generators. We're very fortunate to have a beautiful hydro plant that has provided for our communities very well for many years, and we use very little diesel fuel when we're not having issues. We have a run-of-the-river hydro, so when the water's low, it gets a little more difficult, and we do have to sometimes go on diesel. Or when we're doing maintenance or have other issues, we'll go on diesel. But for instance, last year we burned about 2,300 gallons of fuel for the entire year. So our hydro is very effective. And but that being said, when we are in crisis mode, we've been very fortunate that we don't have a lot of outages. We haven't had a lot of big issues in the last 12 or 13 years that I've been there. But when we do, the community pulls together. They understand they live in remote communities and we're going to have issues. And sometimes it takes a minute to get things back online and repaired. We try to keep a stockpile of diesel fuel on hand. We do have a tank farm that we keep filled. In the event that we had a catastrophic failure at our hydro plant, we could get by for some time with the fuel on hand. So that's, as far as dealing with things in a crisis in Alaska, we're very, very used to kind of thinking for ourselves, doing for ourselves, because we know that help, it can oftentimes be a long ways off, if even available. So as far as that goes, we've been very fortunate.
Mr. Hawkins, did you have some follow-up question?
No, I think what they represent is something very similar to us in the sense of independence and challenges. We don't have the advantage of run of the river, and if you're using, I think you said 2,300 gallons, I think in the previous years, It's remarkably low.
Mhm.
So I'll just say that, which would be a welcome change up here. So we're not tied to grids, which would be a long-term advantage. I would suspect, obviously it would be your advantage, but that said, it's probably so remote it would be impossible. So, and I mean, nothing can't be solved without money, but it is an impossible financial task, I'm sure. Anyway, thank you for taking the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, one of the questions that comes up for me, I mean, with little to no staff, who's operating and maintaining the equipment? Do you have kind of a group of volunteers, or how is this all typically dealt with? Or is it kind of on a crisis basis? But I have to assume that there's regular maintenance that needs to be done. So how do you kind of go about organizing all of that?
So right now, we are actually more staffed up than we have ever been. So it's going to be a busy summer. We do have some pretty big projects on our plate for this summer, and we have just hired a new plant operator. We have an existing plant operator that is very well versed in our entire system, and he does a great job. We have a general manager, and he does a great job. And we have a part-time customer service rep and myself. So between us, we've just always been able to, we all clean the bathroom if it needs to be cleaned. And so we just pitch in and do what we can. So right now we're sitting actually in pretty good shape.
Okay, that's good to hear. Do you want to maybe help us better understand the power cost equalization program and what it does for your cooperative, and how that came about? Is it a new program or it's been around for quite a long time?
So the PCE program has been around since 1983, or a version of it. And it's changed a little bit over the years as far as who's eligible. And but when they established it, it was with the money used from our oil revenues. The state had invested a large amount of money in the rural areas and helped build out what we refer to as the rail belt, which are the communities, the grid that's connected from Homer to Fairbanks comes through South Central. And so as a result of that, they said, well, let's help out the rural communities by establishing this program that will help folks pay their electric bills, because they're oftentimes 2 or 3 times higher than what we find on the rail belt. So they established it, and they assigned responsibilities for 2 different pieces. You have eligible utilities that had to apply through our regulatory commission, which is one state entity. And then you had customers that were eligible, and the fund administered through the Alaska Energy Authority. So by separating those 2 things, you took away any kind of opportunity for politics to get involved. You had one entity deciding what was reasonable in cost, what was correct in efficiencies, and you had another entity that was determining who was eligible. So with those 2 state components, the utilities would have to report their cost and their generation and their sales to the Regulatory Commission, and then report their customer information to the Alaska Energy Authority, who would then cut them a check for reimbursement. And that's probably the biggest misnomer of the program, is that the utilities are not the beneficiary of the program. They are a pass-through. Their benefit is that they get about 40% of their accounts receivable through one check reimbursement from the state. But they have quite a bit of administrative work to do to accomplish that. I personally have believed that our microgrid communities, which there are, I think there's 187 that participate in the program. I don't know that they would be in existence if they had not been required for the last 30 plus years to read their meters, bill their customers, read their meters on their generators and operate efficiently, even know what that means. There's been a lot of training offered in order to assist these utilities in being responsible, productive, and viable utilities in rural Alaska. So PCE has played a very large role in keeping that going simply through the reporting requirements. When you have to provide every month to the Alaska Energy Authority what you generated, how much fuel you used, what you sold, it really does force the utilities into paying attention to their utility at a higher level. So, I think overall that's really been one of the greatest benefits of the PCE program, other than the obvious, which is assisting customers in paying their bills. It does only apply to, I think the last time I looked at the statistics, it was about 30% of the kilowatt hours sold were eligible. So another, misconception of the program is that it comes in and pays everybody's bills, which is not true. It pays a portion of about 30%. That being said, I believe the current budget years have been in $45 to $48 million, have been the benefit to the communities. So, that's a huge influx of revenue all the way around, from, the person that is saving that money on their electricity bill is better able to travel, better able to feed their family, and, live in these remote communities where the costs are very extreme. So, if PCE were to go away, I'm not sure how long a lot of these small communities would be able to maintain their electric utilities and afford to live in the rural communities. So it really is an important component. As you guys, I'm sure, well know, you have similar situations.
Yeah, we really do. And my next question is about how this cooperative model came about. How was your cooperative established? Is it governed in any specific way, or is it a bit more ad hoc than that? Can you kind of help us understand how that works? Because that's something that we don't have here is these kind of independent cooperatives. We're all sort of under the NWT Power Corp umbrella for the most part, except for a few communities.
I see. So there are many co-ops in Alaska, and they are member-owned, and they are governed by a board that is elected by its members annually, and they usually sit on a 3-year rotation. Our board in particular, we have a 5-member board, and they rotate out on 3-year terms. We've been very fortunate to have a very dedicated board that is very conservative fiscally. So that is how we're able to, maintain local control. And the advantages are, of course, the members get to drive what is happening with their co-op. And they get to be responsible for what the co-op's doing, what we're spending our money on, etc. You may or may not be familiar with the Alaska Village Electric Cooperative. They are a cooperative that has, I believe, 51 communities under them now. And so they are managed a little differently. Of course, they have a lot larger board. They have a lot more communities to serve, but we're unregulated. So we're able to set our cost and our rates as we see fit, being unregulated. So all the co-ops in Alaska are unregulated, and that helps them be, sustainable locally and under their own control.
Okay, unregulated, interesting. It's something you don't hear a lot about in Canada. Committee members, does anyone have further questions for Terri? Okay. Not seeing any. Yeah, I mean, do you have any kind of further thoughts or insights you wanted to share with us, Terri? We don't have a hugely inquisitive committee this morning, but definitely appreciate hearing from you.
Well, I think that in my experience, I think sitting at the table and telling the truth about what's happening is the best idea. I've seen many committees get together and really try to come up with pie in the sky ideas of how we're going to be 100% renewable in rural Alaska, when the reality is a lot of these communities are going to generate with diesel until they're no longer in existence, because there's just not another viable, affordable option for them. So as you move forward in, you know, your committee meetings and your plans and your solutions, I just so often see people getting invested in what they want to happen versus what reality is. And I believe there's a solution, you know, for all of us if we're willing to come to the table with the facts and just the facts and make decisions based on those. So as you guys go forward, if you think of other questions that you might have for us here in Alaska, and a way that we can help you, at least share with you what has worked for us and what has not worked for us, I'm happy to participate in those conversations. I do understand you've got a few other folks from Alaska that are going to contribute in the next few weeks. So just know that everybody here in Alaska is happy to share our experience and try to be helpful in your what you're trying to achieve there.
Okay, thank you. I do have another question that's come up for me. One thing I was curious about is, I mean, I'm curious to hear about this run-of-the-river hydro that you've got in place. I mean, that can be pretty expensive infrastructure to put in place. So did the cooperative build it itself? Was that something that was a federal investment at some point that you're now benefiting from as legacy infrastructure? How did that all come about? Or is it relatively cheap to build run-of-the-river where you are? Like, I'm kind of curious to understand how you got to the point of having hydro infrastructure for such small communities.
Well, we were a state experiment, so they came in with about half the funding, and we took out loans and received a few grants for the rest of the funding. And so it is very expensive for a small little co-op like ours. We would never have been able to do it on our own, but we still have about $5 million in debt service that we're paying. So that's going to be ongoing for another 20 years or so before we have that all paid off. So it does have to have a funding mechanism that is outside of our communities. We could have never done it without. There are several videos out on YouTube, if you're at all interested. If you look up Tazimina Falls, and that's Tazimina, Tazimina Falls is where our hydro plant is, and there are several really good videos out there about us, about our project out there. So if the state had not come in and ramrodded this project, it would have never happened. But it is a stunningly beautiful remote hydro plant in the middle of nowhere, and it's just pristine. So it's definitely, if you get a chance to look up the videos, it's something to see. We're very, very fortunate to have it. Very fortunate.
Very cool. I appreciate you sharing that, and I'll certainly check out the videos. I have a question that's come up from a committee member, Mr. Rogers. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. And I did have an opportunity to look at your website and take a look at some of the photos you're talking about of your hydro project there, and a little history of your cooperative, which is very interesting. You're speaking my language, and you talk about common sense. I live in Inuvik in the Northwest Territories, which is about 100 miles from the Arctic Ocean as the crow flies. So we're fairly dependent on diesel up there. We do have some. We have some LNG in there as well, and we have some one-off kind of solar projects and wind projects in there. But again, at the end of the day, in the Arctic coast of Canada, that's not going to be your be-all and end-all, and unfortunately, we're reliant on either diesel or other fossil fuels. Some of the things we struggle with up there is because the federal government does provide some funding for different one-off projects like solar projects and whatnot, which does work very well in the summer. But also does pull off some of the revenue from the power generating plant up there as well, which also then begs the question of where does that revenue get replaced by, if not by the other folks that are paying the power bills up there. We do net metering, and I'm wondering, I don't know what the capacity is in your area. I'm not familiar with the communities or what's in there, but is there any? Do you have any net metering options there? Are there any businesses or residents that do look at putting in small solar or wind to kind of offset some of their costs? And if so, is there a net metering program for that in place? Thank you.
We do not offer net metering, essentially because we know we have such a small customer base in which to pay our fixed costs that we just cannot pass those costs on to other folks that would not be operating in a net metering scenario. We do sell interruptible kilowatt hours, which is our spillover from the hydro plant, typically for heating. So we have interruptible boilers. The schools and a couple other entities have in the communities in which we sell them very, very cheap kilowatt hours for heat generation. But aside from that, we recognize that the kilowatt hours that we sell are necessary to pay for the operations of our utility. So we do not offer any net metering opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, and I think if I'm correct, you generate about 1.4, 1.5 megawatts, I think, up there is what your total power outage is in there. What's your total population of the three communities? Thank you.
About 410-ish.
Wow, that's 3 communities?
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the subject of this presentation, but I'm very curious what you guys do for fun over there. But you don't have to answer
that. I'm fortunate. I live in Anchorage in the big city. I was born and raised here. So, but the opportunity, I fly out there usually at least once a month. And in the summertime, there's a lot of fishing, there's a lot of hunting, a lot of berry picking. In the wintertime, there's a lot of cottage industries, crafting, and folks just really enjoy the quiet. It's too quiet for me. I can't get a latte or my hair done, so it's just too small for me, but it is beautiful, and folks find a way to enjoy their living out there.
Yeah, it sounds very, very similar to the Northwest Territories. I think we've got a lot of similarities. I have always noticed that no matter where you go, remote communities and northern communities, you feel like you're at home when you walk into one of them, whether you're in Russia or Canada or Alaska or wherever you are. They're all very similar. Something about the North just kind of brings people together and puts them in similar situations. Any further questions from committee members about the cooperative, about small hydro, anything like that? Seeing none, I do want to thank you very much for taking the time to share your presentation with us and to share some insights with us. It was very helpful. Do you have any closing comments you wanted to share with committee?
Nothing other than we're here and available to come back if you do think of follow-up questions or want to have further conversations. I'm happy to participate in those, and I just wish you all the best in your endeavors going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And on behalf of committee, again, I want to thank you for presenting. And so for folks who are tuned in online, that concludes the public portion of today's standing committee meeting. And I'll conclude the public portion of the meeting, and if committee wants to stick around, we'll do a debriefing camera. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks again.